It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
Tremendous.
Delightful.
Embalmed. Happy New Year to everybody.
Yay.
I hope everybody out there is doing okay. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Man, we've got like a couple of weeks worth of stuff here.
Oh, hell.
2 hours later.
Yeah. Golly, and then my mind goes blank. What the hell have I done for 2 weeks? Well, I did go on vacation. That was cool. I've been watching a lot of what we're doing, our show on tonight, too. But besides that, I've been watching a lot of true crime stuff. I don't even know how I got started, but it's like once I started, it was like show after show after show. And then when we went on vacation, I pulled Phil into the crime drama.
You've been hanging around Mike and Les too much.
There's some really messed up stuff out there, you know. Netflix has released one called Evil Genius, which is about the pizza bomber. The guy who robbed a bank with a bomb wrapped around his neck. And then I think the cops stopped him at a McDonald's parking lot, and it wound up blowing up on him. And it was kind of sad because the cops this whole time, I mean, yes, you have to be careful, but the cops the whole time didn't know if he was in on this, if he was a victim, you know, a hostage kind of thing, which I think it turned out he was. He just happened to be the wrong pizza delivery guy, you know. And even sadder, you know, this bomb winds up blowing up on him, right? Instead of cutting this thing off of his neck so they can examine it better, they cut his head off. It's like, dude, don't you think the family, for one, has gone through enough because they watched their family member blow up on TV, and so you don't, you know, disturb the evidence. You cut his head off so they can't even, yeah. Like I said, it was kind of like, wow. But that case was, have you ever met the people who are like so genius that they're stupid? I mean, that's pretty much what these people were. They were smart, but they weren't too common smart, I guess you could say. Common sense kind of smart.
No people skills.
Yeah. And yeah, so that one was kind of strange. And then I watched one about the, what was that called? Confession Tapes. It's also on Netflix. Now, if you've ever wondered how screwed up our justice system is, watch Confession Tapes. It's these people, they're accused before there's any kind of evidence or proof that these people are guilty. And it's like the cops just hammer into them, and kind of one guy, they were like making his confession for him, and all he was saying was like, yep, you know. And the only reason he went along with what they were saying was because they had his daughter in the next room and pretty much told him, if you don't confess to this, we're going to pin everything on her, you know. So he was trying to help his daughter. Plus, this whole confession thing was in a shed on somebody's farm out in the middle of nowhere. That's where they decide to interrogate this guy, you know. So I'm hoping through some of the stories we saw and how these people were, you know, coerced into a confession when there was really no evidence supporting that, somebody out there's watching who can help them. They had one guy who he wanted to be a police officer, and his parents wound up being killed. Well, his parents were pretty wealthy, and he was the next in line, and pretty much had arguments with them before about when he got his fair share. Well, he's also kind of simple. So when they get him in there, they just keep him up for at least 36 hours because he didn't confess until 38 hours into this thing. But he was so tired, and, well, I guess if that's what you say, that's what must have happened, but I don't remember doing that. And he winds up naming a cousin, and come to find out, these two guys had nothing to do with it whatsoever. Two kids took a joyride in a stolen truck, found the house out in the farms, found the house, killed the couple for gas money, Well, when they had these two people confessing, hey, this was us, we did this, they still were trying to pin it on these other two guys. Oh, you must have had help. When did you meet these guys? And they're like, we've never seen these people before in our lives. But the cops were so adamant on their story that even when the facts weren't supporting their story, they were still willing to pin it on these two guys, It kind of reminded me of, I've talked about it before, Paradise Lost, the Robin Hill murders. Those cops, of course, when you have something that horrific happen in a small community, you want people to feel safe immediately, so they found these kids that listened to Metallica and wore black and had pentagrams wrote on their schoolwork, like any of the normal freakers back then, But it went from just being heavy metal fans to, oh, they're in a satanic cult, and these symbols are for their rituals. And it's like, no, that's on an Iron Maiden cover, But they did everything to pin it on these kids that whoever did that got away with it. And that's the sad part about it, is they were so dead set on appearances that they didn't even capture the right people. Years later, those three finally got out, but in order for them to get out, well, okay, Damon was the main guy, and they're about to gas him. That's how far this went. After knowing they're wrong, in order to let them out, and so they wouldn't sue their ass, they had to say that they were guilty. And at first, the other two guys were like, well, hell no, we're not going to say we're guilty. We'll keep fighting. Well, Damon had run out of time. He didn't have any more time to fight. They were about to kill him, So the other two confessed to being guilty to save their friend's life because they were out of time, And even the state will tell you they were wrong about this. They were wrong. So if you're curious about that one, I noticed they did put all three of those on HBO now, the HBO Max. It's called Paradise Lost. Like I said, there are 3 parts to it, and that was it was crazy how involved people get in just appearances, And it's like, wow, not only to be judged on your appearance, but the music you listen to. So that one's pretty eye-opening.
I seem to recall there being a lot of that going on back in the 80s, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, completely. And this actually happened early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So, everybody was still kind of,
right.
In that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, wow, if people judged me on my music, whew. Wow. I'd still be in the jail cell, But yeah, that one's, like I said, that one's really good. I would recommend that one to anyone, but there is a lot of true crime stuff on YouTube, and Netflix has added a bunch too, and it's easy to get sucked in. So be careful what you pick.
Mm-hmm. It's a very popular podcast genre too, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watch Bailey Sarin, who, she does Mystery Mondays or Murder Mondays, and she usually takes a famous case and breaks it down while she's doing her makeup and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. And she's even like called a crime before it was solved, and she was right. So I was like, that's so cool. So yeah, pretty good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Not where I was expecting that to end up, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all right. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. Mikey?
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, I spent a noticeable amount of time watching stuff for the podcast. Not only the stuff for today, but I'm starting to look ahead a little bit. So I'm gonna not drop any spoilers yet, but I've watched something. We've got something going down in February, and I'm starting to get into that. It will be fun. It will be interesting.
Yeah.
One other thing I did watch, which I can't say I was surprised at kind of what was going on with it. It's another one of my music documentaries. This one was called Sensation, and it is the story basically of the creation and impact of the Who album Tommy. Yeah, if you've ever listened to that album, it's for when it came out, it was some weird and dark shit. I mean, it the thing you have to realize though is it came out of what was essentially at the time a pop band. I mean, their hits, the Who's hits up to that point were all pop songs, and
Yeah.
I mean, they had some good ones. They had some stuff that's still really popular, still gets played today. Tommy got a little more autobiographical in some really dark ways than almost anything had ever been before. And
Wasn't that one of their stories though?
What do you mean?
Wasn't that like one of their life stories?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I meant with autobiographical.
oh yeah, sorry.
It was.
You threw a big word at me.
Sorry. Unfortunately, I do that from time to time.
Yeah.
Too many syllables.
I'll try. Wait. So
Lose it down.
It was polysyllabic. What?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
What'd you call me?
I've always loved, and this is not like an original joke, but I've always loved the fact that monosyllable has 5.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're talking about the Who here. Yeah. Basically Pete Townsend wrote that thing almost entirely by himself. He enlisted some help from the other guys on a few things, but it was basically his. I mean, it's not exactly autobiographical, but there are some elements there that it was stuff that was loosely based on things he had been through. He apparently had a terrible childhood.
Yeah.
Growing up, being a young child during the war, and then just a difficult family situation, and so he was kind of a very awkward kid, and being like 6'6" or something didn't help. However tall he is, he's really tall, but yeah, and so he the impression I got was that he kind of got to the end of the writing pop songs part of his life kind of all at once and was like, okay, now what? And he's like, okay, you know what the world needs? The world needs a rock opera.
Yeah.
And so he wrote one, and honestly, writing it probably came real close to destroying him because it was, one, a hard thing to do and had never been done before. And he went to, like I said, some pretty dark places in it. And if you have not heard it, it's an awesome album. I mean, and it's one of those albums that you will recognize a lot more of it than you think you would, because there was a bunch of stuff that got radio airplay off of it. Some reasonably big hits, and it kind of forced them to turn the corner from being a I mean, I won't say bubblegum pop. It was, but they're definitely on the pop charts.
Pretty close, yeah.
And they went from that to being one of the loudest rock bands ever. And they did that over the span of about a year. There's some kind of interesting bits about that in it too. But yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I'll have to
does.
check that one out.
It's really interesting. It was. I mean, I always think those things are a lot more interesting than they should be. So I'm probably biased, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Can I throw one more thing in there? Speaking of music.
Sure.
I had forgotten that Dave Mustaine was in Metallica.
Yeah.
And they pretty much woke him up one morning and told him, get the fuck out.
Yeah, basically right before they recorded their first album.
Yeah. And I on the way down to the farm, I was watching this thing where Lars had actually sat down with Dave Mustaine and they were talking about it. And, you know, Dave Mustaine was like, dude, you hurt me. You know, you really hurt me. There was no second chances. There was no, hey, you got to get your shit together. There was no warnings or nothing. You know, you just threw me out. And Lars didn't have a whole lot to say. And the whole thing that was really ironic about this was he was telling Dave what a big, you know, drug problem he had. But do you know why James isn't at the interview with him? Because he's in freaking rehab right now. You know, so it's kind of like, wow, you know, talk about hypocrite, you know. But I found out, for one, I'm glad they actually sat down because he was like, I'll always love you, you know, and what you guys did probably saved my life, you know. Plus, who hasn't heard of Megadeth, you know?
Right.
But it was just kind of like, wow, I didn't know that. But he said that not only did they kick him out of the band, they made sure to like erase anything he had ever done with them. Anything his name was involved with, they like scrapped it, you know? So it was like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a little harsh.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't probably have had Megadeth at all without it.
Yeah. Who was almost as popular
Mm-hmm.
as Metallica, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Like I said, I was glad they sat down. It's kind of like when Eddie Vedder died. Or not Eddie Vedder. I'm wishful thinking.
Ouch.
Wow.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sorry. Eddie Van Halen, when he died, it was nice to know that him and Sammy actually sat down and talked it out and were finally in good graces with each other again, too,
Yeah.
you know. So.
Yeah, so it is good that at least Lars got the chance to do that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And, you know,
I'm sure
Lars,
it was awkward as hell to do, but
oh,
yeah.
sure.
still, yeah.
And like I said, he didn't have a whole lot to say because everything Dave said was true, you know. He was like, well, you were very violent. He was like, do you know why I was violent? You know, he was like, the night that, I think he said his name was Phil Sandoval. He says, man, he pushed you down to the ground and kicked you. And Dave Mustaine wound up breaking both the guy's legs, you know. He's like, you know, I would do that for my band members because I loved you, not because I was violent. Is nobody in my band, my family, was going to get hurt like that. And it was sad because Lars couldn't even remember the guy's name or what happened, but this was enough to kick me out of the band over. And you can't even remember the guy's name, you know.
Well, how many decades later was this conversation? I mean, come on.
Yeah, but you know what? If somebody broke somebody's two legs in front of me, I'm going to remember that, especially if it was over me.
Yeah,
you know?
that depends on how drunk and high you've been in the decades since then. I mean,
True.
let's be realistic here.
But I still remember that my friend Billy popped a guy named Jerry in the face in band class who were calling me a name. So, you know, those kind of things you remember. But he was like, I just knew it was violent. Well, yeah, it was violent because I was protecting you. It seems like he should have remembered that part at least, you know.
You're an optimist.
Wasn't, yeah. Sometimes.
You're also not a junkie, so,
Yeah, true. And you never understand that. But like I said, Dave Mustaine cleaned up after that. You know, he did go on to do Megadeth.
hmm
So,
He did.
yeah,
He turned it into something positive. I mean,
he did.
there's some angry stuff in the Megadeth catalog too. So
Yeah.
clearly there were anger issues there anyway. But he channeled it. He
And
figured out a way to make it work.
one thing I didn't know about Megadeth is most of his songs have some kind of Christian undertone to them. And that's who he credits for his recovery and everything. So I thought that's pretty cool, I didn't know that.
I didn't
I'll
either.
have to listen.
Oh darn! Got to go back
Yeah.
through the Megadeth catalog again. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, sorry. I forgot about watching that. And when you mentioned The Who, it was like, oh, yeah.
No, that's cool.
But I did think it was kind of sad that James wasn't there for being in rehab. But,
Right.
oh, he's still in your band?
Mm. Barely.
I thought when y'all sold out, you sold him too. No, sorry. I didn't say that.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm an old Metallica fan, not a new Metallica fan.
You're not alone there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people like that. A lot of people don't believe in anything after the Black Album. A lot of people don't believe in the Black Album, to be honest.
That's what I was going to say. The last half of the Black Album was,
We could probably have discussions, but yeah.
We'll have to have that one night.
We might just have to do that.
Yeah.
It might be fun.
Yeah. And then we can talk about the other bands like Fugazi and stuff who never sold out.
Yeah.
So, Les, how do I follow that?
Yeah. What's your favorite sellout story, Les? Come on. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, boy. My viewing was not as heavy as what preceded me, no pun intended. I watched a film that I've spoken to a couple of the members here before because it reminds me of the movies that AGFA would show at the Alamo Drafthouse. This is called The Doll Squad, about some girls, a group that are secret agents. It is fun. It's funny, not meant to be.
Oh, one of those.
One of those. And the reason I looked for it was I wanted to see Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. I found that one of the actresses appears in the Doll Squad. So I said, well, I can't watch Pussycat because it's high priced. So I watched this and I was just holding my sides, laughing so hard and rewinding and watching and rewinding and watching just to see some of the crap that was going on. So I highly recommend the Doll Squad. And after that, I found another movie she was in with John Carradine as a mad scientist. And I said, I got to see what this is. And then I found out that both movies were directed by the same man. And you could tell how cheap it was in both features. So I tell you, look those up. They're a lot of fun to watch, and they'll make you just shake your head, but you will not look at it and say, I just lost an hour and a half of my life. You'll enjoy them.
Nice.
Cool.
Very nice. For me, I kind of did a little escape. I was actually binge watching Three Stooges. How about that?
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out a little bit of trivia. Some of it I did know. Some of it I did not know. Did you know that Curly made a cameo in one of the Shemp shorts?
I thought
No.
there were 2 of them.
He was actually supposed to be in the second one, but that apparently did not come about.
Okay.
But yeah, he was in the one Hold the Lion, which the short where they stole away on the train and there was a loose line and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sequence where there was a guy, they were looking for a guy. I can't remember all of the story right now, but they were looking for a guy, and they lift up this guy's hat who was taking a nap and had a clothespin on his nose, and they took the clothespins off and he started snoring. It's Curly's snore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's him, but you wouldn't recognize him because he had hair.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one, now from what I read, it did not come about. Are you saying it actually might be?
Oh, I don't know for sure.
He was supposed to do another cameo in I'll have to go back and look and see what it was, but he was supposed. It was one of the ones where they were like in Arabia, and it had to deal with the whole rootin' tootin' diamond and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were running a restaurant. Well, the cook was supposed to have been Curly, and he actually showed up to do the film that scene that day, but he was so ill that it did not work. So Larry took over the role, and of course at this point, he had so many strokes that's basically why he quit the group.
That's why he stopped being in them in the first place, is because
Right.
he just couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't remember lines or any. I mean, he was, from what I've read about all of that, he was never fantastic with lines to start with.
Yeah.
They had to cue him a lot, even when he was healthy. But yeah, once he started having the mini strokes, it got bad fast, and he had to quit. They had to find a replacement for him.
Yeah.
And which the funny part of that is the guy they got to replace him, who was Shemp, was actually the guy who he was actually in the act before they started filming the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they would. My understanding is they would swap out. I mean, Shemp would do it sometimes, and Curly would do it occasionally.
Yeah.
And when they started doing the shorts, I guess the producers of the shorts liked Curly better, and so they just used him exclusively for the first. Oh God, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't even remember how many years. Several years.
Yeah, several years. Yeah.
But then they brought Shemp back. That was Shemp coming in and being in the shorts was a return to the role for him, not him starting in the role new.
The other reason why Shemp wasn't brought on when they first started filming, from what I have read, is that he didn't really want to do it. He kind of wanted to go off on his own, because he did have somewhat of a modest career on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did like serious films.
Yeah.
He was never a star. He was never a leading role.
He was always doing bit parts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
still.
he did quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then once Curly got ill and had to leave the group, from what I had read, he came back on the condition that this was only temporary until Curly could return, which never happened.
Which didn't happen because he passed away not too long after. A couple of years, I think. It wasn't long.
Yeah, it wasn't. So So I was doing that. Got some reading. I picked up a book called DC's First Issue Specials. It's a hardcover that collected a very short run series. It was actually called DC's First Issue Specials. Les may remember this.
Yes.
And it's funny because the introduction is written by Jerry Conway, and he kind of talks about how this came about, or at least for his understanding, because he became an editor on the book, and in the last several issues, he actually had to write the story. But this series came out in early to mid 70s, and at that time, the comic book industry wasn't doing so well. So Carmen Infantino, who was over everything at the time, was looking for suggestions on what to do. Well, according to the story that Jerry had heard, someone supposedly jokingly said, let's just do a series where it's a first issue, every issue. And apparently Infantino took it literally. So the whole concept of each issue was going to be that first issue, a kind of showcasing a character for a possible pickup of a series later on. So each issue was a first issue appearance of another character, or well, maybe not a first appearance because there was also Creeper was involved in one of the issues. Dr. Fate was involved in one of the issues where they were leading. So it wasn't their first appearance, but it was like a first issue.
So this is like an entire series of spin-offs.
Yes,
in its
exactly.
own way. Yeah, that's a weird idea, but it's cool.
And of course, this series is probably best known was for the first issue of Mike Grell's The Warlord, which he talked about, which Conway talked about in the introduction, which is it was on a technicality. He had already been given a green light for an ongoing series, but it was still included in this series. So he considered it a success. but it's fun, kind of fun reading it because you've got Ditko, you got Jack Kirby, you got a lot of big names doing stories in the series, and and I had read them a long time ago. I read some of them when they first came out, so it's kind of nice going to go back and read them again. And some of these characters have actually been picked up and used later on. With like the first issue was Atlas, which was written and illustrated by Kirby, and James Robinson used him in a Superman storyline within the last several years. Just brought it back. So it's kind of cool to see some of it. Say, hey, this character that you have no clue who this is, he first showed up about 40 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And nobody used them. So
Neat.
So yeah, it was a fun read. So.
And where did you find that again?
Sorry?
Where did you find it again?
The trade, or where did I pick it up?
The trade.
It's called DC's First Issue Special. Yes. And it's the first is spelled 1ST. It's not the actual spelling of the word first.
Okay.
Okay. Before we get into this week's discussion, kind of want to invite everybody to join us on our Discord. It's been going for about 6 or 7 months now, or probably more than longer than that now, because we started back in about 7 months now. So we post a lot of fun stuff on there. We post a lot of news items. Got some Discord exclusive activities going on. It's been a blast. It's been a joy to be a part of. And how you can join us? Well, if you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, right there on the homepage is an invite right there. The Discord app is free. to sign up, and it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So come join us and take a look at kind of what we're doing when we're not recording episodes.
Where tacos going next?
That's a hint as to our current month's little adventure that we're having on Discord.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It's been fun so
Yeah.
far.
It has been. Okay. For this week, we kind of wanted to discuss the Sherlock Holmes film series that starred Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, which actually ended 75 years ago this year. And there was 14 films.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them were handled by, I'm trying to remember, it was 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, it was Fox.
And then the last 12 were by Universal. And for some people, like myself, I still kind of picture Rathbone if I think of Sherlock Holmes. That's the kind of the image I come up with. So I figure we'd just talk a little bit about the series. I know we've kind of discussed a little bits and pieces of this in prior episodes, so we may go over some old territory, but that's okay. But just kind of discuss these a little bit and kind of take a look back at these films. So who would like to go first?
I had watched one of these back when we did the Christopher Lee Cushing, The Hounds of Baskerville. Someone had told me, hey, if you liked that one, check this one out. And that's honestly the first time I've ever seen Rathbone and Nigel Bruce together, or any of the Sherlocks. I rewatched that one again when we were going to talk about this one. It was like, there's a lot of differences in those two, just storyline. It all goes to the same place and everything else, but totally two different stories. And I have to say that I liked the Rathbone version a lot better. It didn't start out like Beauty and the Beast, for sure. So, that's always a plus.
Oh, that again.
But I do like these two together. Rathbone almost sometimes is funny, which is kind of funny in a kind of way. So not in a, but yeah, I liked these. I really did. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch all 14.
Oh,
I
man.
probably did watch about 8 of these.
Okay.
And
Damn.
I'd have to say my favorite so far out of all of them was Dressed to Kill with the music boxes. And yeah, that one was really good. Kind of different, I didn't know where the music box was going. What's so important about this. So, but yeah, I said it was pretty good. I do like these. I will finish these just because I did enjoy them so much. And a lot different than any of the Sherlocks that I've seen previous. So, yeah. And I think you had pointed out to us too, and I didn't notice until you said it. There's quite a few times he asked Watson for his pen. So, that's kind of like, oh, okay, I know what that means now.
Uh-huh.
And out of those 14, only one of them we can't watch over here. I don't know why. It's blocked from the country.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
It looks like it's The Adventures of.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually watched that one.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see that one. Where'd you watch it?
On YouTube.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess the person that I'm watching them from, because he had all 14, that one wasn't allowed here.
Maybe I have to drop you a link or something. But
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
yeah, I watched that one, and I watched The Voice of Terror, which I didn't realize at the time were consecutive. They are the second and third ones, because I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, I actually don't want to rewatch The Hound of the Baskervilles for this. I want to watch something else. I want to watch something different.
Right.
I actually was thinking I was watching something later, but it turns out nope. Because I wasn't paying that much. I didn't like pull up a timeline for these things. I just sort of grabbed two, and it happened to be the second and the third ones on the list. The thing I thought was interesting, and I actually could tell a difference, although I didn't know at the time what the difference was. I watched one of the Fox ones, and I watched one of the Universal ones, not realizing that they were done by different studios, and I could tell a big difference in production value without even knowing why. It was clearly they were the Fox was taking the whole thing a lot more seriously. They were not treating them like B movies.
Yeah.
And it
Now,
really,
did Fox do Voice of Terror?
no.
No.
No, Fox did Hound of Baskervilles and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Those are the two that they did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Everything else was Universal, and there was like a 3-year gap between.
There was. Yep.
Yeah, and it was
39 to 42.
yeah. And I've watched some of these before, like a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it always bothered me because I came at it. I had read the Doyle stories first, and I hadn't really. I mean, I probably had seen some of the Jeremy Brett TV series, just on because I watched a lot of PBS as a kid, because that was where all, as far as I was concerned, I mean, it was all reruns, but that was where all the interesting stuff was going on when I was growing up in the call it the early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
Even into the late 80s. That's where the stuff I wanted to see was. And because it was different. It was it wasn't mainstream TV in the United States. It was off the wall stuff. And so you got stuff like a lot of the comedy stuff that came over originally. And you get Monty Python, and you get after you get Monty Python, you get just a complete flood of everything, of basically every sitcom they ever did over there, which is not true, but a lot of stuff of widely
the British
varying.
Invasion.
Yeah, a lot of widely varying styles of comedy, and you get some interesting drama stuff as well. You start picking up. I mean, like things like Masterpiece Theater would grab, I mean, almost random dramas and mysteries from British TV just stick them on the air over here. And then you get stuff like the Sherlock Holmes series, and you get stuff like Doctor Who. And that's the stuff that interested me at that point in time. So I had seen some of that. When I first saw these films, the Rathbone, the 30s and 40s stuff, it was very jarring to me the way they treated Watson.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked about this on the show before, and this is where I get to hammer on about it for a little while.
No pun intended.
No pun intended at all.
Hammer.
Yeah. Oh man, I really wish that Hammer had gone on and done more of those. I really do. But anyway, that's a tangent and a half. Yeah. I mean, Watson in the stories, Watson is. I mean, in the first story, Watson is basically fresh off the boat from Afghanistan. He was in the army, and he was this. I mean, it was set in like the mid 1890s or early 1890s. So I mean, this is England. This is colonialism at its height, basically. And so he's a military doctor. He actually comes back injured He comes back because he's injured, and he's kind of rehabilitating and basically needs to find a roommate and get set up with this Sherlock Holmes guy. There is no hint whatsoever that he's a bumbling idiot. I mean, for crying out loud, he's a medical doctor.
Right.
He's seen combat as well. There is no reason for him to be a bumbling idiot. And I started seeing what they were doing with this Watson character, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And so I didn't watch very many of them in the olden times because I just couldn't get over it. And so I sat down and I watched 2 of them kind of in prep for this, and I basically had the same problem again. It's
like he always has to get one over on them, like one up them.
It's right. It's as if the creators thought that the best way to make Holmes look smart is to make someone nearby look stupid, and I just don't. That's not how that was written originally.
Yeah.
And I don't think it worked. I will say that the Fox films they're definitely more, the story is more involved. Like, for example, in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the story is way more involved. It is definitely multi-layered, which is a lot more like what you would want and expect from a Holmes story. And it's based on basically a stage play that Conan Doyle co-wrote with somebody and was put on stage, obviously. And so so Doyle himself had a hand in it, and it's definitely got the vibe that you kind of expect after having read the stories. Even the very first of the Universal films, Sherlock Holmes and the Voice of Terror, very different feel. It is a much simpler story. I mean, basically, it's got two kind of parallel stories going on, and they just wrap up with a neat little bow at the end.
Yeah.
And it's loosely based on one of the later stories, but it's not quite the same, and they clearly changed enough stuff in it that it just doesn't feel like a Holmes story. And so I don't know, it just felt cheaper to me. I mean, maybe I'm looking at it a little too specifically already at this point, but yeah, I'm not. I didn't. As much as I thought Basil Rathbone did a really nice job as Holmes, I would have almost rather they left Watson out of it.
Yeah. Well, in some of them they almost did,
Yeah, he barely.
He was kind of an afterthought. Yeah.
He's sort of following Holmes around.
Yeah, like a puppy dog.
Yeah.
I didn't care for the Voice of Terror.
Yeah.
It to me there was so much happening, and then at the very end when he's like, "Yes, I knew this because this," it's like, well, why the hell didn't you show us that? Maybe I would have known that then too. But I don't know if it was the whole Nazi thing or. The girl who helped him the most winds up dying. That was cheap. But
yeah, why? Of all the people in that room, why the hell does the Nazi pick up the gun and shoot the girl?
I think because he realized you sold me out. He didn't, until Holmes ratted her out. He didn't know. But
if he's thinking at all with his little Nazi brain and he wants to do the most possible damage, the girl's not the one you shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I mean, that is how they caught him, though, is because of her.
Right. Which.
So I think that was a, snitches get stitches kind of thing.
It was a way for somebody to die, basically, in that room without it being anybody important.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll just shoot the girl because she's not important. I mean, hello, she was very vital to she was the key to the story, really.
For him. Yeah.
I mean, admittedly, Holmes was playing her like a puppet, but she's the one who
Right.
did the legwork, and she was the one in the dangerous situations. And I thought they made that pretty clear throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she just gets randomly shot for no reason at the end.
I loved her bar speech.
Yeah. Her
When women didn't stand up to men like that back then. So to see her do that and have the fiery red hair, it was like, you go, girl. You tell them.
Listen carefully to her speech, though. She says word for word a lot of the stuff that Holmes had just said to her.
Yeah.
She's really repeating that. I mean, she does carry it. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but they fed it to her. Even in the story, they fed it to her. Not just, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the actress was good, but yeah, it was a little. She did a really good job with it, but it was a little hokey in the wings,
Yeah.
which I also thought was disappointing. I was like, it would have been cool to see her like sit there for a minute, go, and then get up and do her own thing, as opposed
Yeah.
to just repeating what he said. But yeah, she sold it for sure.
She did.
I want to go back to something you just said, Mike. You talked about how they dumbed Watson down. I think that was kind of the trend at the time, because I'm thinking of the Charlie Chan films and how he was, quote unquote, aided by one of his sons, but it was, the sons would always ask questions or point out stuff, but in a lot of cases, and especially when you get later into the series, and then they changed out sons, it's almost the same thing. It just, make stupid suggestions, or I just don't totally understand what the hell's going on. So, Charlie has to correct them and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of one of the things that kind of aggravates me about those films. Besides other stuff, which we
Right,
won't
and
get
then
into.
that's what they copy with the Holmes movies. I mean, come on.
I think that's kind of the thing.
That's a terrible reason to do that.
Yeah.
My opinion, obviously. But yeah, that's annoying.
Watson was a little bit more of a I don't want to say a comic relief, but in a way he was. I remember the film, I think it's Woman in Green. It's the one where they kind of dive into hypnotism a little bit. And then there's the whole sequence where Watson just doesn't believe it at all, so they try to prove it with him, and of course he does fall under, and they tease him and do different types of stuff, and then he wakes up and he's like, see, I knew it was all poppycock and all that, and then he realizes what they did to him. It just, you go like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And I like the movie Woman in Green. It's a pretty good film, but it just that's a perfect example of how they handle Watson in the series.
Yeah, he's almost an afterthought, and it's sad because he really, in the stories, he's contributing. I mean, Holmes, he can count on him. He's loyal, and he's a freaking bulldog. I mean, he's kind of, he's more, I always thought of him as more being indicative of kind of the whole British tenacity thing. They can, I mean, you get the stereotype of the stiff upper lip, and I mean that's kind of personified in Watson in the stories as someone who Holmes can count on no matter what, even no matter how weird he's being, or no matter how much crap he's throwing at Watson. Watson's there. Watson is a good and loyal friend, and he's also. I mean, they don't hammer on the military experience, but they do mention it. Holmes does mention it. I mean, Watson has a firearm. He has a sidearm. He has a pistol, and Holmes generally doesn't carry a pistol. or a weapon of any kind. I mean,
It's
that's
pain.
not what he does. Yeah, and I mean, they talk about him in various ways and places as being competent in martial arts, but it's not. When Holmes needs to essentially start a fight or protect somebody, he takes Watson with him because Watson's that guy. And
Yeah.
he's also a medical doctor, so if something goes wrong, he's a good doctor and is on the spot and he's done combat medic stuff, and that just all seems to go out the window. I mean, there was one point in one of these movies I watched that somebody gets shot or something, and they walk in and they run in. Holmes and Watson run in, and Watson immediately goes to the injured person, and Holmes walks around and does his crime scene thing, and then looks at Watson and says, "So what do you think?" And Watson goes, "He was shot." I'm like, really? No shit. We knew that.
Thank you, Dr. Kill Patient.
He didn't need to say that 3 minutes later when it was obvious when he walked in the room that the dude had a bullet wound. I mean, come on. That was just it was so irritating. Like I said, I wish they'd handled these better. I would love to see Basil Rathbone do this role in an actual real Holmes story, because I think he's good at it. But it's so hard to watch some of the stuff going on around him. Okay, I need to stop hammering on it now.
Les, jump in.
Well, let me just say that I agree that making Watson an idiot is the dumbest thing that movies could have done.
Mm-hmm.
The man in the books was relating the stories. So everything that was written was actual, and there was no idea that Watson was a fool. The other thing I have a problem with, I love the movies, and I know there's a reason, but I did not like the idea of an update. Let's make it modern. Let's make him fight Nazis.
Yeah.
Where the hell did that idea come from? Because I think there were, I want to say, of the 14, there were 3 that were based on stories. Is that right?
The list I'm looking at shows a few more than that, but certainly not all of them. Maybe half.
But just the idea of you have to have something that is current and make that part of your storyline. I'm not buying it.
I think they made it modern so it could be cheaper. So you don't have to have the big sets that look like back when these stories were originally written.
See, and in that one, they even made a point with the cap. There was at one point early in Sherlock Holmes and the Voice of Terror where he and Watson go over to they're grabbing their coats and they're putting their coats on and they're grabbing their hats, and Holmes grabs the deerstalker cap and Watson says, "No, wait, you promised." And Holmes goes, "Oh yeah." He puts it down and picks up a modern hat and puts it on. They even made the point that they were intentionally modernizing these things in the script.
Yeah.
Which I thought was awkward as hell.
Yeah.
But it was just, yeah, and I don't, yeah.
Which one was it that dealt with the bomb site? Do you recall? He was hiding the inventor of the bomb site so the Nazis couldn't get it. I'm drawing a blank.
Not sure.
Yeah. I'll see what I can come up with.
But that one just struck me as odd. Yet I think it was also supposedly based on a story, and I thought, I don't recall this happening. So, overall, I enjoyed the stories, enjoyed the films, but you got to be a little more precise with some of this stuff. Was it The Secret Weapon? Yes. Yes, the secret, Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon.
Okay.
That was 42.
Yep, that was the fourth one in 43.
So.
Yeah.
I was say it sounded familiar, but
I mean, I can sort of get why they want. I mean, honestly, we're in the middle of World War II in these early ones here. 42, 43, 44. I can sort of understand why they want to make the Nazis the bad guys. But man, it is jarring. I mean, for me anyway. I mean, obviously I'm not alone too, but it is jarring to have to kind of get your mind around that. It just doesn't feel the same. I mean, in a way, Holmes doesn't make sense in World War II.
Yet I watched Young Sherlock Holmes the other day also, which put him in the time period, but before well, I can't say the meeting of Watson because that's the whole point of that movie. But this was the young version, therefore he was not fully developed per se as a detective, and I enjoyed that because it did make it look like it was an older time. So, take that look. Then they can do that now. But to me, that was a lot better take on it than what was produced in the 40s just by updating it, making it modern.
Yeah, I mean, even in Baskervilles and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the Fox ones, I mean, they're riding around in carriages. I mean, so it's not like they tried to move them forward in time then, and I didn't think it hurt anything. I mean, okay, so they managed to find a way to put a car crash in a film set in horse and buggy times. But I mean, I thought it worked okay. It didn't seem out of place. It didn't feel, I mean, it felt like a car crash, but it felt like an understandable car crash. I don't know. I'm very mixed on these movies. I mean, part of me thinks that I need to watch more of them to make them make sense, and another part is like, but if I watch more of these, I'm just going to get madder and madder and madder. I at least need to take a break before I watch any more. Because I want to like him, because I want to like Basil Rathbone as Holmes, because, man, I can't really think of anybody better, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just...
To me, he kind of looks like Christopher Lee, too.
Well,
with the long face and... Yeah.
I think his voice is not that far off either. I mean, it's obviously a little higher up, but not much. And yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't argue with that.
Well, here's something I'm not aware of, and Mikey, you might be interested in this. Both Rathbone and Bruce did the radio show. The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes for several years. Looks like from 1939 to Rathbone left in 46, and then Bruce left like a year later. I would love to hear those.
Which is, I mean, all of that is at the same time these films are happening too. So,
Right.
man,
Yeah.
they were immersed in these roles.
Yeah.
Maybe what I need to do is watch a later one to try to get a feel for it. Yeah. It's one of the things I really wish I could like these movies a lot. But, man, so hard. They make it so hard. I mean, and I'm sure they were popular at the time, and I get that I can sort of see them leaning towards the popular Charlie Chan movies. But, come up with a new detective to do this with.
Yeah.
Don't do this to my boy Holmes. And honestly, ultimately, that's the ultimate problem, is that I came into these movies already a fan.
Yeah.
And that's where they lost me. I mean, I wish I could say there were a ton of awesome adaptations later. There were some really good ones, but it's always been hit or miss. Like I said, I would have loved to have seen Cushing do more.
Yeah.
I agree.
I really would have loved that. He only did the one. I guess it didn't sell well enough.
Yeah.
Because they sure did the hell out of some Frankenstein movies.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they did.
They got weird with them things, too.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we take a quick break?
No.
I think I've bitched enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You took my job.
I know, I'm sorry. I thought you needed a break for a change. I don't know. I was just trying to
I'm
help.
still on vacation.
well, just check them out for yourselves and see what you think. We would love to hear what your thoughts on the films. But yeah, Rathbone. Oh man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't always listen to me. I'm just an old crank. Check them out for yourselves. You might like them.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Even that saying is old.
Yeah, exactly. Proving my own point here.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and be back with our picks. And we're back, and it's time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Les.
Thank you, sir. My first choice is Batman the Chalice from DC Comics. And this is a title that collects the fully painted Batman graphic novel and has more to it. This is a story that includes Ra's al Ghul, Catwoman, Penguin, and an army of mercenaries. And their objective is to steal an ancient bowl in the Dark Knight's hands. So you're going to have the Grail, you're going to have Bruce Wayne, you're going to have these villains. So I want to find this one and look it up. Written by Chuck Dixon, and the cover illustrator is John Van Fleet. So I'm in on this one.
It does sound good.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Liz, you're next.
All right. For my first pick, it's one from Image. It's called Ha Ha. This is the writer from Ice Cream Man, and it's pretty much going to be the same style. One-shot stories, several stories in an issue kind of thing. But we will be looking at the world of clowns. To me, there's nothing freakier than a clown. They hide under makeup. I mean, we've had some pretty scary-looking clowns, I mean, John Wayne Gacy. But this one says they're going to peek under the big top, over the rainbow, and even inside of a balloon to tell a wide-ranging slew of stories about the funny men and women, proving some things are so sad you just have to laugh. And I think if anybody will be able to jerk those emotions, it will definitely be Maxwell Prince, because he creeped me out with Ice Cream Man so bad.
So basically,
That is true.
he's attacking childhood. I mean,
Pretty
talking
much.
clowns, Ice Cream Man,
Childhood is creepy if you think about it. I mean, come on.
It is.
So, yeah.
And I think those two things people have phobias against, so it's kind of cool to kind of, nudge them.
Got
I'm
it.
definitely picking up a copy of this for my son who just loves clowns.
Wow.
Nice.
Is this so he gets ideas for makeup to wear around the house?
Oh, no. That'd be the other kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one should be pretty good.
Yeah. This one was kind of on my list too.
And some pretty good artists, Vanessa Del Rey and Jason Alexander on this one. So, Gabriel Walta. Yeah, should be pretty good.
Sounds like they were going to do a different artist every week. So, yep.
Yep.
That'd be nice.
Yep.
All right. Mikey.
Okie dokie. So my first pick is one that we've been kind of waiting for a little while now. This is from Abstract Studio, which is Terry Moore's personal brand. And this is issue number 1 of Serial. This is the book that we've all wanted since Rachel Rising. This is Zoe's series. And Zoe is the 10-year-old kid who's not. She's been a 10-year-old kid for going on 50 years now. And she's not afraid to stick a large knife into something over and over and over again if she needs to, for whatever reason. And so now that the world is not ending, thanks to the goings-on of the previous series, 5 years, she's kind of off on her own a little bit, and finally not kind of running for her life all the time. And she has discovered that a friend of hers has been killed by a serial killer. And she has opinions about this, and I am dying, pun intended, to find out what they are.
Yeah. This one did look really good.
Yep. Should be a hoot.
Good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I am next, and for my first choice, it's coming from Wake Entertainment, and it's called Essentia. And this takes place 150 years in the future. And it's the story of two cities, one called Bethany, and the other one's Essentia. And Essentia towers over Bethany, and apparently is the city of immortals. And it sounds like we are going to find out what it takes to move to Essentia. According to the synopsis, this is a story of one would do to become immortal, who they would abandon, who they would betray, and ultimately what price they would pay to remain in Essentia. And I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. So.
That does sound interesting.
That does sound cool.
Alrighty, Les, you're up again.
My second choice comes from 21 Pulp. This is a title, Hero Hourly. This is a mature audience's book. It is a trade. And if I remember, Hero Hourly came out 3-4 years ago. But in this, you will find a character named Saul who works as a superhero. But you find that they have like time cards. They have to check in to be a superhero, and they have the same work issues that everyone else does. This is a collection written by James Patrick and illustrated by 3 fine artists. I remember getting Hero Hourly #1, but I never saw an issue #2. I enjoyed the first one, but unfortunately could not come across #2. So I'm going to find this one and see if it's as amusing as the first one was.
Definitely sounds good.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Liz.
All right. For my second pick, I'm really excited about this. This is coming out of Scout Comics, but it's their Scoot imprint that they've been talking about. Richard Riviera, who does Stabbity Bunny, is going to help with this series, so I'm so excited. But the first book they're launching with is one called Soulstream, it's written by a 16-year-old comic creator named Saida Wolf. But this will follow Maria and Marcus. There's a mirror world which has been replaced by a volcanic wasteland, pretty much. So she is summoned by a goddess who gives her a ocean bracelet where she can summon different things. So I'm pretty excited. I always think it's great when youngsters can start in young and get a fresh start, and it sounds like this Scoot imprint's going to do that. But it's also another line for young readers to get interested into comics. So I'm always happy about that. But it sounds like the stories are going to not only be for younger readers, but it's also aimed towards the adults too. So definitely excited for this one. I'm not understanding. They say enjoy the first issue of this nonstop, followed by the entire story collected soon after in one volume. So I don't know if they're just going to release these weekly and then collect it, or I'm not sure how this is going to work. So I'm excited.
I kind of read it as it was a first issue, and then the rest of it would be collected. Because I did notice. I don't know if you noticed the price point. It's $1.99.
$2.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool, because if this is aimed at young readers, that's a good price point for them.
It is.
You know? So I guess they'll release the first issue and then it in trade. Kind of give you a taste.
That was kind of my impression of that was the impression I was given.
So when DC Comics did their DC Inc., I guess it was for the young readers, which they canceled. But like usually the first issue or a little tidbit of it would come out at Free Comic Book Day. Mm-hmm. So that way if you liked it, you could buy the book. So maybe it's like that kind of thing.
Could be.
So.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the equivalent of the dollar comics that some of the other publishers do, and say, oh, okay, well, if you like this story, then here's a trade that includes that story and other stories. So it could be along the same premise.
Yeah. I do hope they keep that price point down for the younger guys, though.
Yep.
You don't want it to jump up to $4.99 like some people?
Right, you know.
Alrighty. Yeah, this was on my radar as well, so I'm glad you picked that one, and it sounds really good. So
it does. It sounds really cute.
Yeah. Alrighty, Mikey.
Okie dokie. So, funny story. I have another Scout Comics book. This is not for kids, not by a long shot. This is called Stake. This is issue #1. That's Stake. And it will be obvious very shortly. This is the story of a young woman named Angel, who 3 years ago, her two best friends were killed by vampires, and this is the first time anybody ever really heard about vampires in the world. Um, and so, like I said, this was 3 years ago, and now she has formed a group, and her intention with this group is that she wants revenge. She wants to take care of the vampire problem. This this is an interesting. I think this is an interesting premise. This is an interesting way to start a vampire story, and so I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, how they take it. Could be really cool.
It does sound cool.
Yeah.
This is another one that was on my radar. Yeah, I definitely like the premise of this one. So, yeah, I definitely want to check this one out. Okay, for my second pick, it's from Marvel Comics, and it's the Chris Claremont Anniversary Special. Marvel is celebrating 50 years of Chris Claremont in the comic industry. He wrote a lot of Marvel titles back in the day. Of course, best known for the Uncanny X-Men and all the spin-offs in the 80s and 90s. He wrote most of that. But he was everywhere else. He was in Marvel Team Up, just everywhere. Just a ton of books. So they're celebrating his legacy on the publisher, and it actually includes a new story that features his creations, Danny Moonstar from New Mutants, and Shadow King. So apparently, Mirage is going after Shadow King. So this sounds really cool, and it's awesome that they're doing this to honor Claremont for everything he has done. So I'm kind of excited about this.
Cool.
Yep. I understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any special shout outs this week?
I don't think so. Not me, anyway.
No.
Not here.
Okay. All right, we'll just move on to our regular shout-outs then. First off, I want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be a part of a great group of fellow podcasts. We highly recommend that you check out all their shows. There will be a link in the show notes. We also want you to check out the fine men and women who make up Potter and Family, who've been so gracious enough to spread the word of the fellowship on Twitter by retweeting our links. We ask that you would check out some of their fine work, and the best way to do that is to do a search, hashtag Potter and Family, all one word. Scroll through, and whatever catches your attention, just click on that link and download the episode, and hope you have a good time. Thank you guys for your support as always. I also want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. There will be a link in the show notes so you can check out their music. Thank you guys, as always. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We do appreciate your support, and we value your feedback. If you have a comment, question, suggestion, complaint, observation, what have you, by all means, send them our way. And there are several ways you can reach out to us. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, and there is a contact form you can fill out there. As I mentioned earlier in the show, that we do have a Discord. You can join us there, and you can contact us individually if you like. You can follow us on our social media. On Facebook, we are the Fellowship of the Geeks, and on Twitter, we're at Fellowship Geeks. If you'd like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, you can find Mike at Mikey Geek. Liz is at LN_geek, and I can be found at TomTCGeek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you'd be so kind as to rate and review our show, it would greatly be appreciated. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, friends. We do appreciate your support as always. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,